Hi children, welcome back to our chemistry class. We were discussing various separation techniques in the last class. Today also, let us discuss some more techniques. First one, how can we separate a mixture of two miscible liquids? For this we use the techniques distillation. So what is simple distillation? The process of converting a liquid into vapors upon heating and then cooling the vapors back to the liquid state. Here, a mixture to be separated is taken in a glass flask known as distillation flask. It is provided with a thermometer to record the temperature and an outlet for the vapors. The flask is heated from below as shown in this figure. And here acetone vapors condenses in the condenser and can be collected from the condenser outlet because here we taken the mixtures of acetone and water. Water is left behind in the distillation flask. Listen dears, this method is used for the separation of components of a mixture containing two miscible liquids that boil without decomposition and have sufficient difference in their boiling points. That is, acetone will not decompose on heating. That is, once again, it will get as such even after the boiling. And the mixtures like the components like water and acetone must have sufficient difference in their boiling points. Next, we are going to discuss how to separate a mixture of two or more miscible liquids for which the difference in boiling point is less than 25 Kelvin. For this we use fractional distillation process. For example, to separate the different components from petroleum products, and see the apparatus is similar to that of simple distillation, and here only one difference is that one fractionating column is fitted in between the distillation flask and the condenser. And see what is a fractionating column. It is a tube packed with glass beds, and these beds provide surface for the vapors to cool and condense repeatedly. Here, this process is carried out in a fractionating column containing some glass beds. And see, the vapors of high boiling liquids will rise up but get condensed, releasing energy, and that will be taken up by the vapors of low boiling liquids, which means that by using the fractionating column, both evaporation and condensation will occur simultaneously. Okay? For example, while we are separating the mixture containing ethyl alcohol and water, ethyl alcohol will first boil because of its low boiling point, and then water. So vapors of alcohol will escape from the flask and will collect in the receiver after condensation, as described in the case of simple distillation. At the same time, the vapors of water that I told you, it is high boiling liquid, will fail back in the flask after getting condensed. In this manner, fractional distillation helps in separating two miscible liquids. So you have to remember, simple distillation technique can be used if the components in a liquid mixture differ in their boiling points by more than 25 Kelvin. In case the difference is less than that, fractional distillation is used. Okay. So I hope you got the difference between simple distillation and fractional distillation. Okay. Next we are pass on to the next topic, separation of components of air. Air is a homogeneous mixture and can be separated into its components by fractional distillation. And the apparatus used to separate various gases from air can be seen here. First, we take air, it compressed and cooled by increasing the pressure and decreasing temperature in the first chamber. And the hot air is passed through another chamber where there is a water outlet in order to make cool. And this cooled air, that is liquid air, is passed to another chamber called fractional distillation column, where it warms up slowly and gets separated gases at different heights depending upon their boiling points. Next topic is, how can we obtain pure copper sulfate from an impure sample? For this, we use the method crystallization. See, the activity given: take some impure sample of copper sulfate in a china dish as shown in the figure. Dissolve it in a minimum amount of water. Filter the impurities out. Evaporate water from the copper sulfate solution so as to get a saturated solution. Cover the solution with a filter paper and leave it undisturbed at room temperature to cool slowly for a day. You will obtain the crystals of copper sulfate in a china dish. The first diagram is the heating of copper sulfate solution in order to crystallize crystal copper sulfate. And second one, the china dish shows copper sulfate crystal. And see, by heating, it is not to stay for a day. Within hours, you will get the crystals of copper sulfate. The same method is used to purify solids. For example, salt we get from seawater can have many impurities in it. To purify these impurities, the crystallization method is used. So, crystallization is a process that separates a pure solid in the form of its crystals from a solution. And so listen, crystallization is better than evaporation. Why? Some solids may decompose and some substances like sugar may get charred during direct heating. Some minute impurities of particles may still be associated in the solution obtained upon filtration. So, they will be present in the solid residue left after evaporation. So, in crystallization, the crystals obtained are always pure. Third one, direct heating or evaporation does not give crystals, only we get a solid residue in the dish. Okay, so these are the three methods or 3 points which gives why crystallization is better than evaporation. The main application of crystallization are purification of salt that we get from seawater, then separation of crystals of alum from impure samples. So, we discussed some separation techniques according to the nature of the components of a mixture to get pure substance. And as we know, the technology is more advanced now. So, many more methods of separation techniques have been devised. Next, we are going to discuss the physical and chemical changes. To understand the difference between a pure substance and a mixture, let's understand the difference between physical and a chemical change. In the first chapter, we discussed about various interconversions of different states of matter. Each states have their own hardness, rigidity, fluidity, density, melting point, etc. And these types of properties are referred to as their physical properties. So, by converting one state to another, these physical properties may change. So, chemically, they will change. For example, both water and cooking oil are liquids, but their characteristic properties are different. They differ in their odor, inflammability, etc. And we know that oil burns in air, whereas water extinguishes fire. So, it is this chemical property of oil that make it different from water. So, during a chemical change, it undergoes change in chemical composition. That is, a chemical change bring change in chemical properties of matter and we get a new substance. Therefore, a chemical change is also known as a chemical reaction. Simple examples for chemical change. Can you say curdling of milk is a chemical change, rusting of iron is a chemical change. Then can you say what about the burning of a candle? In the case of burning of a candle, both physical and chemical changes are taking place. And see, in order to study the difference between a physical change and a chemical change. Let's tabulate them as shown here. Let's see physical change and chemical change. In physical change, it is a temporary change, whereas chemical change is permanent one. Then second one, it can be easily reversed. Physical change. Then it cannot be easily reversed. Then only the physical properties of a substance change. Here both physical and chemical properties may change. Then no new substance is formed. Here new substances are always formed in a chemical change. Then identities of the substance do not change. Here identities of the substance change. Next one, energy changes normally do not occur. Here energy changes always takes place during a chemical change. Finally, mass of the substance does not change in physical change, whereas the mass of the substance does change in a chemical change. So these are the points of differences between a physical change and a chemical change. Okay students, did you get me? Yes. And the last topic, what are the types of pure substance? In order to discuss the types of pure substance, their chemical composition should be understood. So by knowing the chemical composition of substances, classified either as elements or compounds. So what are elements? In 1661, Robert Boyle was first used the term element. Then Antoine Lavoisier established experimentally useful definition of an element. And Lavoisier defined an element as a basic form of matter that cannot be broken down into simpler substances by chemical reaction. So Lavoisier gave a definition for elements as it is a form of matter which cannot be broken down into simpler substances by chemical reactions. And the elements can be broadly classified into metals, non-metals and metalloids. And we have learned the properties of metals. They are lustrous, they conduct heat and electricity, they are malleable, they are ductile, they are sonorous, they are hard, etc. And examples for metals as we know: gold, silver, copper, iron, sodium, potassium, etc. And mercury is the only metal that exists in liquid state at room temperature. And about non-metals, they display variety of colors, they are poor conductors of heat and electricity, they are not lustrous, malleable, sonorous, ductile, etc. Examples: oxygen, nitrogen, chlorine, sulfur, phosphorus, carbon, bromine, etc. And see some elements which are intermediate in properties of metals and non-metals, and they are termed as metalloids. Boron, silicon, germanium, etc. are metalloids. And here bromine is a non-metal which exists as liquid at room temperature. Mercury is the metal that exists as liquid at room temperature. Okay? Yes. Then what are compounds? A compound is a substance made up of two or more elements chemically combined with one another in fixed proportions. When two or more elements chemically combined in fixed proportion, we will get compounds. Okay? So, here let us make a difference between mixtures and compounds. Mixtures means the elements or compounds just mix together to form a mixture and no new compound is formed. Whereas elements react to form new compounds. The second difference is a mixture has a variable composition. In case of compounds, the composition of each new substance is always fixed. The composition, from the definition itself, we have studied that there is a fixed composition. In the case of mixture, it shows the properties of constituent substances. Then what about a compound? It is totally different in constituents particles. For example, sugar solution. It's a mixture or a compound. It's a mixture itself, no doubt. And its taste of sugar, yes. And see, what is water? H2O. How it is formed? By combining hydrogen and oxygen. And if any properties of hydrogen and oxygen to water? No. Is it? Never. So, compounds differ from their component particles, whereas mixtures shows the properties of constituent substances. Finally, the constituents can be separated easily by physical methods, but the constituents can be separated in compounds only by chemical methods or electrochemical reactions. That is by applying electricity. That is what we call electrochemical reaction. Just passing electricity through the compound, they will dissociate into its components. Okay? So these are the points of difference between mixtures and compounds. Okay, students? Thank you.